Welcome everyone to Green Source on the Air, episode number 3. We are so glad you're taking time to join us. Hopefully you're having a wonderful dinner, and we have a very special evening for you. As you can tell, I am on the road. Normally we would be broadcasting from high atop the tallest building in Carrollton, Texas. But I am broadcasting from Mud Creek Country Store in Franklin, Texas. And we've left there and now just crossed the Brazos River down, heading for the beautiful hill country of Texas. But again, we are so glad you've taken time to join us. We are recording these episodes so that people can access them on greensourcedfw.org. Our program tonight is a celebration and visiting with 3 wonderful guests in respect and honor for Juneteenth. We will be asking our guests about the recent legislation and their memories of Juneteenth. We normally start these meetings with what I call the fireside chat for tree huggers, but now that the temperature is up around 100 degrees, we probably will ditch the fireside chats and figure out something else to do. A couple of quick welcomes. First of all, welcoming my co-host, Victoria Howard. How are you, Victoria?
Hello, everyone. Hello, Wendel. Lovely to see you. You're very Top Gun with your aviator sunglasses. I love it.
Gotta look the part here to be cruising on the highways. So we have Victoria, and of course we have Julie and Carl Thibodeau on the technical side of the board. And I will say, needless to say, without Julie and Carl, it would be a much different presentation, and we appreciate what they do very, very much.
Absolutely.
Yes. Did someone say excuse me?
No, I said absolutely.
Oh, absolutely. I was going to say excuse me. That's all right. We can excuse too. We need to make our very important announcements. One is, so I don't forget at the end, we will not be on the air in July. We will be beginning to prepare for the Green Source DFW Awards Dinner, which we are hoping will be live again from the Dallas Arboretum. That is very big news. It's not for sure, but as things are going now, we are trying to be back at the Dallas Arboretum for that wonderful awards dinner in person. So we're going to start working on that. So even if we don't have the dinner, obviously we will still have the awards. We'll be working on that in July. In August, we will be back. I believe it's August 17th, the third Thursday. And it is going to be a special program honoring women of all nationalities, socioeconomic women that have made an incredible difference in the fight for the clean water, clean air, and the clean environment. So we are going to have a very special program in August. And nice segue, that program will be put together by our sponsor, Dallas College. Dallas College has stepped up big time to support Green Source on the Air, and they will be putting that program together. So our incredible thanks to Georgianne Moss, Brandon Morton, and all the people at Dallas College for their support, and look forward to that in Thursday. Our other sponsors, longtime sponsor, of course, is EarthX. They are banner sponsor for Green Source DFW, and Dallas Sierra Club. Victoria is the conservation chair, the co-chair for the programs committee, and we have a long running cooperation with Dallas Sierra Club. And we also have new sponsors. We have Stephen F. Austin for their sustainability program. And we have John and Margie Haley, other rock stars that have been supporting green groups and green events before it was cool to do that. So, I mean, we love those people. Julie, did I miss somebody else? Did I forget any of our other sponsors?
No, that's good. City of Fort Worth. Can you say that? City of Fort Worth Solid Waste.
There we go. Yeah, City of Fort Worth Sustainability and the Water Department. They are one of our new sponsors also. So anybody listening tonight want to get on the bandwagon for Green Source on the Air. We'll be bringing new great programs every single month. And Victoria, any other announcements from the other side of the world?
No, just welcome to everyone. Thank you so much for being here on our third show. And thank you, Wendel, for being part of this, even though you're on the road and going to meet some fabulous new people in your life. I am good and hankering to start this wonderful show.
All right. Our first guest tonight is, I call him a true friend for myself and a true friend for the environment and a really true friend of all of Dallas-Fort Worth. Our first guest is Ernest McMillan. Ernest is the winner of the 2019 Green Source Environmental Justice Award. And we have Ernest, I believe, Zooming from, where are you today, Ernest? I can't hear him. We got him muted somehow.
Oh, thank you. Yes, right now I'm in the land of enchantment in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and one time zone away from you in Dallas.
Well, Ernest, you and I had spoken, and that you have moved to Albuquerque. I do believe we need to think very seriously about having a New Mexico chapter of the Environmental Justice League, so that we can all take field trips to New Mexico. So be ready for some friends to come visit you.
You're welcome at any time. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, I need to tell one story about Ernest, and then we'll let him talk, because I think this tells everybody a lot about Ernest McMillan. When we were getting ready, or when we were talking about bringing on General Honore to Dallas-Fort Worth to take a tour of all the green sites, I believe it was about in December somewhere, and some emails were flying back and forth, and I believe it was Ernest said, well, let's put this together for February. I believe it was December, maybe even late December. And I believe with my foot put into my mouth, I said, Ernest, we normally take 6 months to a year to put this kind of event together. Are you sure we can do it by February? And of course, Ernest being Ernest, he came back and said, Wendel, no problem. It will happen in February. And as all who were involved in that know, it went perfect. It was wonderful. And that might be a good place to start tonight, Ernest, for you to tell us a little bit about how you put that together and just generally what his visit meant to Dallas and the whole community.
Thank you, Wendell, for that recollection and remembrance of those times. I'd just like to go a little further back than that before I start and say that this has been quite a journey, and there's been new chapters opening, and the latest chapter in my life has been with the environmental justice. And I came through that awareness and involvement. Excuse me, we have some dust in the air here in Albuquerque. That awareness came to me through just recognizing through the work with a theater company called Academy of Theater, the sacredness of Mother Earth. Through the plays, we enacted one called Yana Anna's Legend of the Bluebonnet, another one called Bless Me Ultima. Began to realize the value and the worth and the sacredness of earth and the water and the air. And so just plunging into that, creating conversations around that led me to environmental protection justice seminar in Dallas for Region 6, including New Mexico, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, and Texas. And through that, I met people who were struggling for environmental justice in Oklahoma and New Mexico and so forth against asbestos, lead, air pollution, water pollution and so forth. So he let me say, what are we doing here in Dallas? In Dallas, I discovered there were many struggles going on, but they were seldom connected as allies and working as one. And I felt that was troubling. Another thing I thought was troubling was that there was a lack of visibility of African-American, Indigenous, and Latinx persons involved in the struggle. And I thought that was questionable and what we needed to address. And so when I put my heads together with other folks, there was a willingness and a receptiveness and an openness to see if we can change the narrative somehow and move steadfastly forward. And so that came to birth of the idea of bringing together a network, an environmental justice network in Dallas. And people responded to that. In our very first meeting, I think it was November, September of 2018, people responded. The Dallas Peace Center, Green Source, Grow North Dallas, the Texas Environmental Campaign, White Rock United Methodist Church, Veterans for Peace, many other organizations came and said, let's do this. And so with that inspiration and that impetus, we said, let's go forward and do something. So that's when we issued that call. It was a tremendous response especially for retired General Russell Honore, who was in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, who was introduced to me by my cousin who worked with him as a colonel in the Army, while General Honore was, I think, a 2-star, 3-star general then. So through my cousin Israel Anderson, we were able to connect with Russell Honore, and he just was so generous and so open to coming here. In fact, he has a sister living. He said, no need for me to have a house to stay or transportation. I'll get there on my own if I have to drive. He was very willing and so generous in his coming to see what we could do to contribute to the struggle in Dallas. And so all the stars were aligning, Wendel, in so miraculous ways. The community was receptive. The organization said, let's do this together. Russell Honore said, yes, I'll be there. And the need was so present too. We looked at the conditions in West Dallas with the lead pollution going on. We looked at the air pollution going on in Joppa, the lack of water in Sand Branch, unincorporated community, but that whole community, no running water, and look at the pollution in Highland Hills. So we chose those areas to visit in one day. And Russell Honore came and he spent maybe 3 to 4 days with us. He went on the air with the Think Show and highlighted what the concerns were in his role and what he had hoped to see in his vision. We then took it on the road to those communities where people who lived in those communities got on board the bus, sat down and told us what happened. We stopped in those different villages and those communities and interacted with the people there and learned so much. And then he also did a editorial presentation to D Magazine and other local media folks like the Dallas Morning News to get out some policy demands. And then he met with us at Holy Cross Catholic Church for a mass meeting. And it was a tremendous showing of folks who came out. And so we had a learning lesson. We learned about what the Green Army is all about. And that you don't have to wear the color green, but your heart can be green and do a lot of good things to protect the air, protect the water, to make it safe for generations to come, to be responsive to the sacredness of our planet. And so we learned a lot. We pulled people together. I was so excited to see that happen. I felt my job was done in that, and the struggle continues. I see more people of diverse communities getting involved in the struggle, working with Sierra Club, working with Downwinders at Risk and so forth and all that. So the Joppa Neighborhood Association, which is one of the oldest freedom towns in Dallas, maybe in the state of Texas, is highly involved in this fight against air pollution and having removing that dumps the spot in Deep Oak Cliff. And people are more involved in speaking out for environmental justice. The city of Dallas has created a commission to set some standards for cleaner air, cleaner water, and better, and having all the departments of the city get more engaged in proactive activities to make the city of Dallas a brighter spot for our children, for a living in general. So I see some positive outcomes. The struggle still continues. We got so much work to do, and I think time is not going to something we can just play with and do it at a leisurely pace. We really got to step it up. I'm glad to see we have back involved in the international climate community and working for new measures for reducing our carbon footprint. And so those are some hopeful signs, but the clock I'm hearing in my head is tick, 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 ticking. And I'm in an area of the country now where I can see there are forest fires. We get smoke coming from Arizona, blowing and covering the mountain of the Sandia Mountains in Albuquerque. We have three-digit heat wave going on now in the month of June. And so, and lack of water resources. So it's really pronounced here, and it should be pronounced in our hearts. We see more vicious storms, high intensity, more droughts, at the same time, more floods in other areas. So the earth is groaning and commanding and demanding and asking us and pleading with us to be more careful, more mindful of the planet we live on. It's our home. We need to take better care. What we take out, we need to put back in. We need to treat it as sacred soil. So I'm just hoping we will get this message out through our continued hard battles, keep the struggle going, and make a safer place so my children, my grandchildren, their children will be at a home in a safer environment.
You know, Ernest, I remember, I don't know if I was at the first meeting, but I know I was at the second meeting when we met there at the Salmons Theater there on Harry Hines. And who would have ever thought just from those meetings that we would make such a quantum leap in basically a team effort between all the green groups and all the community groups. Who would have thought we could have done really so much in such a short period of time?
Let's keep it going, Wendel. It was a miracle. Let's keep the miracle stroking. Okay.
Absolutely. Ernest, if I could ask you a question, please.
Yeah.
First of all, it is lovely to meet you virtually. I was at the 2019 Memnosign event where you won your award. So well deserved. I wanted to have you step back a little bit in what you were talking about and maybe explain to some people who are just new to the idea of environmentalism in Dallas. As you mentioned, and it's so overdue, we're finally to the point now, I think, amongst environmentalists where we recognize that there is no space between environmental racism and environmentalism overall, because the majority of the work that we are focusing on now in the Dallas Sierra Club are Superfund sites in South Dallas, predominantly Black neighborhoods, Latinx neighborhoods, batch plants in West Dallas, predominantly Latinx communities. Every crazy environmental atrocity that we deal with are in neighborhoods where people are underserved socioeconomically and are of a certain demographic. And so the idea that you can separate environmentalism from racism is just a moot. So I was wondering if you could go back to, as you were preparing for General Honore's visit, and maybe tell people who are new to this exactly why Sand Branch and Highland Hills and these areas that you visited, what they were, and not only what they were like, but exactly what part of the world are they all focused in Dallas?
Right. They're in the southern sector of Dallas, and Dallas is a long segregated city in which the northern sector of Dallas is pretty much the wealthy, affluent, white communities, where the southern sector was mainly the people of color, lower income, workers and unemployed and disabled folks and that sort. So southern Dallas has always been a tremendous neglected area, especially when Dallas had this political system based on general elections. So a person in North Dallas can elect somebody from South Dallas in the city council for many years. And even before that, it was no way to vote. You had to pay to vote. There was a poll tax. So the voice of people in the southern sector was negated or suppressed by the system and by the geographical alignment they created. And it just perpetuated itself year after year, generation after generation. gentrification, the destruction of neighborhoods, and the moving of people around, forcible removal. My old community was Freemanstown in North Dallas, central North Dallas, and now it's called, I'm not sure what it's called today, but it's definitely not that. It has the highest concentration of wealth for the whole city, for property wealth, than anywhere else. So we have those kind of divisions, those kind of political manipulations taking place. And in Sand Branch, a community made of over 500 people was in southern Dallas, very close to Seagoville, I believe, in southeast or southwest Dallas, southeast Dallas. And they were without water. This families have settled there generation after generation, even though there's a reservoir a few hundred feet from, I would say half a mile or so from that community, they have no access to it. There is no infrastructure to bring the water in. Back in the 90s, the struggle was launched to rectify that. Nothing has happened. It's been ping pong politics for them. And they have to buy water in containers and bring it into their homes. They can't wash, they can't keep sanitary conditions as any normal human being ought to be able to access. So that was one of our targets. The other one was the Lane Printing Company in Highland Hills. Unfortunately, Lane Printing Company had been established maybe in the 50s. And what they did was did engraving and using acid and other kinds of chemicals to create the engraving properties and products they've had. And so that the material they used was thrown into the river in that very community that was used, that went into the ground, that became crops, corn that people ate. So the higher incidence of cancer, of all kind of illnesses, the diseases are prevalent more so in that area than others. And I think it's largely due to that infraction that took place many decades after decades over in that community. Quinn University is not too far from there. They have a urban garden, and I think it may even be contaminated. So what they're growing is impacted by that long practice of dumping chemicals, harsh, toxic chemicals into the river that flowed throughout the community. So those were two areas we highlighted. In West Dallas, there was a lead smelting plant that produced in the air chemicals that I think maybe in the early 1990s or so, they finally won a lawsuit, and they were able to have victory for people who had been impacted by the lead in their blood systems to get treatment, get health. But that's been multi-generational too, because you have children growing up that have parents that were contaminated or had defects and health disparities that were overpronounced in that community. So we wanted to highlight at least those communities that we took three of those communities and went and visit those, especially. The leader of the Sand Branch community mysteriously died the day before we were there. It's very suspicious. He was in a fire, but they say there were gunshots as well. So we were mourning his loss. We were happy that some people have stepped up in that community to take charge and not let it slide by and not let it the struggle demise. So that was unfortunate, but Ronnie Mestis from West Dallas 1 participated in the discussions in the community afterwards. And so we were to hopefully increase more awareness, more understanding, generate some energy toward making some policy changes and new leadership to take charge and make a difference in Dallas. So that's in a short nutshell, that's kind of what we were aiming for, and that's what happened. Thank you for asking that, though.
You're welcome. And I will tell you, I completely agree with you. I know some of our dear friends were on that devastation bus tour with you, Marcus, Russell, Olinka Green, Dick and Chris Gouldy, and Alan McGill. So we actually have, Dallas Sierra Club has officially partnered with the Lane Plating CAG. So I won't get into the weeds with you now, but let me tell you, Lane Plating super fun site, woo-wee, is it contaminated? So your fears and your intuition and thoughts about that are absolutely correct. And if I could add on to something that you're saying, if you stuck a pin in Lane Plating and drew a circle around it on a map, you would hit Shingle Mountain, you would hit, of course,
Yeah.
lane plating, you would hit G, you would hit, I think McComas would come in there, McComas landfill, not too far. And well, our next guest after you, Collin, has actually written a book about this. So I won't steal his thunder, but he can enumerate for you the countless businesses, industrial, and pollutants that are all within that radius around there. And it's no coincidence. So I cannot thank you enough for doing that bus tour. I was not able to go on it, but I saw the pictures, and I think the most shocking one, and maybe you can elaborate on this a little bit, was the gentleman that you mentioned in Sand Branch who didn't have water. There was also a gentleman who had an open sewer pipe running into the street by his house, so that when you flush the toilet, it all went out into the street.
Yeah.
And this was in Dallas in 2019. There's shit on the street in a urbanized town. It's unfathomable.
And I don't know how the county gets out of rectifying that and changing that. I don't know how the city excuses itself from doing that, but I'm hopeful that people like Olinka and Chris and others, yourself, will take that fight and make sure that the councilmen for that area are really going to be accountable, making sure that the mayor is accountable, that there are policies that are changed to make that happen. So it's going to take a combined effort, a continual operations of strategic planning and strategic action to make the change. But it's worth the effort. We got to do it. If that can happen in one small part of Dallas, it can happen any place in the world. So we need to put our foot down, so to speak. Let's do the work, make it happen, and we can make it, and we'll be successful. We will. I think the energy that's there, the awareness that's there is growing, and the tide will change with our continued persistence.
Absolutely.
And Ernest, our part of our theme today is a celebration of Juneteenth, and I think the word has spread pretty rapidly that Juneteenth has now been declared a federal holiday, and I believe did President Biden sign it? And it has now been signed into law. And I wonder if you'd help us end on an up note. Tell us what Juneteenth meant to you, but also meant to and still means to the community. How important is Juneteenth, and sort of how it all connects with what we're doing against environmental racism?
Yeah. Well, I think growing up, it was Emancipation Proclamation that was more important than Juneteenth for us. So in the churches in our community, the Baptist, Methodist, all these different churches, on Christmas Eve night, we would gather together to commemorate and pray for freedom. It went back to December 31st, 1861, when the first night watch was held for the Emancipation Proclamation. There was rumors and rumors of rumors that President Lincoln was going to sign a bill that was going to make slavery ended and illegal. So we gathered in our churches then and ever since then to pray for freedom, to pray for liberation, to pray for our families to have wholeness and liberty in their control. So today with Biden signing that, it's kind of like it's not really hitting what I really want to see, because the factors, the systematic injustices, systematic racism that's been made bare in our country, the terrorism that we're facing daily, the inequities and disparities that are launched at us all the time, the political suppression that's taking place today, renewed, even after the Civil War was won and Reconstruction began, the reversals began right away with the restitution of the Klan, with putting people back onto the farm as sharecroppers and a new kind of enslavement. So our struggle has gone on before the Civil War, before the war, American Revolution, when we were in Africa, even being kidnapped from there. So our struggle is persistent and has never ended. And a proclamation saying that we were set free in 1865 in Texas, made a national holiday, it kind of leaves a bitter taste in my mouth, because if we can celebrate, give a little applause for that, but to me, it's diversion. It's an illusion in the sense that we have something really solid to celebrate. I want to echo what Dr. King's daughter said today about, she said, but we got so much work to do for justice reform, so for housing reform, for economic revitalization in the Black community, for reparations and so forth, that we can just kind of wave at it in a sense, but we got so much far to go. I'm wearing red because one thing we did on Juneteenth was drink red soda. And I think the spirit behind red was the blood that was shed by our people enslaved. So I'm wearing red because it represents the blood of our people. And that's the spirit I come to Juneteenth with. We honor our ancestors, we honor the contributions they made, we honor the sacrifices they made, and the hope they had, praying for freedom for their children. That prayer still is persistent today. And we haven't had our full answer to it yet. And having a proclamation saying, yes, you were free in Texas in 1865, 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation, is kind of a bitter taste in my mouth.
Well, and the more work that needs to be done, I think maybe we can take this collaboration that we've put together with the environmental groups and the community groups. And in fact, I know it's already happening at the National Sierra Club and Mimnazine and other groups. I mean, this is just the beginning. I really believe it. I think that the cooperation that has happened, how well we've worked together, got good results. I think if being the old white guy on the show today, I think I can say firmly that there are a lot of people who are learning a lot of things that we didn't know, and we're understanding things that we didn't know. And now it's going to be a much stronger team to make that progress, Ernest. And you have my promise, and you have my word, and I know Victoria feels the same. That this is the beginning of better times to keep this struggle going.
Well, I appreciate that. I respect that. Thank you so much for saying that too. We got to put our words into action. Yeah. We got to follow up with our daily devotion to the cause for freedom and justice for all. And I think this is the right spirit you're expressing. And I appreciate that. I embrace that. I want to see more of it. We have some hard conversations to make. We got some difficult things to do within our own communities. The white community has to face as well. We talk about white fragility and so forth. We got to have those conversations. We got to make some new policies, some new practices, some new leadership, and make this shift really happen. HIFT shift happen.
Yeah. So Ernest, if someone listening would like to get involved in making some good noise around Dallas, how would you recommend that they do that? Where would you send them?
I would ask them to first search your hearts and look at where you are, and start where you are. Wherever you are, that's a good beginning point. If you're a student, if you're a teacher, if you are a businessman or woman, if you are a laborer, if you're unemployed, what is your situation, and how can you enhance it, not just for yourself, but for others? So not just being self-absorbed about what your world is like and what you're about, but what can you do for others? So extending yourself to others is the vital part, but starting being reflective of where you are, what are the gifts you have, what are the talents you have, what can you contribute, what can you give, what kind of voice can you make heard? So I think just starting where you are is good. There's plenty of websites, plenty of organizations that are doing great things. I would just take a step out of your house, take a step out of your pathway that you normally take, and go look and see where you can volunteer, where you can contribute, where you can make a difference, where you can help. You can be a mentor, you can be a tutor, you can be a help for some elderly person. You can be a guide to bringing food to someone who's homeless. So there's so many things you can do. Just search your own heart, find out where you are, and let's brighten up that corner. I
agree. Very well said.
Thank you. Very well said, Ernest. We appreciate you being on tonight. And again, we're archiving these incredible speakers and programs. And I'll go back to what I started with, Ernest. I do believe I now see a conference, a environmental justice conference somewhere in northern New Mexico. We'll let you pick the restaurants.
Well, thank you, brother. I appreciate it. Looking forward to that day happening soon. Thank you so much. I appreciate
All
it.
right, I'm gonna mute out, and Victoria, I'm gonna let you take over for our next guest.
Wonderful. Thank you, Wendell, and thank you, Ernest. A true honor and a privilege to meet you. And we didn't get time to get into it in Ernest's interview, but Ernest has a incredible background in the amount of racial advocacy that he has done his whole life. And it is illustrated so well in a D Magazine article that came out about 2 years ago. Julie and Carl, I'm sure you could maybe find that and put that in the chat. But I encourage everyone listening or watching this later to read the D Magazine article about Ernest and find out what amazing hurdles he has overcome and the amazing work that he has accomplished in his time as an activist. And thank you, Julie and Carl. I see it right now. So moving on, please allow me to introduce you to our next guest, Collin Yarbrough. Right up front, Collin is a dear friend of mine and a colleague on conservation and eco-action. Collin, it is a privilege and a pleasure to call you my friend and to also have you on the show. How are you, sir?
I'm doing really well. Kind of like Ernest, I'm an hour ahead of y'all. I'm actually calling in from just outside of Boston, Massachusetts tonight.
Oh my goodness, what are you doing in Boston?
We're visiting my partner's family. She hasn't been home in 1.5 years, so we finally got the opportunity to get up here. And so yeah, it's a lot cooler than Texas, I'll tell you that much.
I bet. Small aside, if you can go to Northampton in central Massachusetts, it's one of my favorite places in the world. Beautiful, charming, fabulous. Head towards the Berkshires and get it.
Okay, good to know.
Well, Collin, I know the answer to my question, but I would like you to share with everyone who may not have heard about your book and about your environmental injustice archives. Tell us what you've been working on and how it actually backs up everything we've just heard from Ernest about environmental racism in certain parts of Dallas.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ernest is a wealth of knowledge, and hit so many nails on the head in the conversation. I was like, man, he's firing on all cylinders, as you would expect. So a lot of my work, especially in the environmental justice sphere, stems from my work on my book, Structure, Policy, and Racism in an American City, which mostly looks through kind of environmental justice in the way that highways paved a way through Dallas. And so a lot of my work really stemmed from that viewpoint, from the infrastructure lens, because I'm an engineer by trade. I spent a lot of time in the utility industry, so that's really where that idea of justice started to form. And as you begin to go through all of the neighborhoods that are getting literally paved away or cut up, many of those same communities are the communities that Ernest just talked about. It's your Freedmantown, Short North Dallas, 10th Street, Deep Ellum, Little Mexico, all of these neighborhoods who coincidentally are also neighborhoods that happen to be what we more traditionally think of environmental justice sites. Lots of lead smelters, lane plating, Shingle Mountain, all of these places are spatially in the same places as these other, as kind of the highway and built environment injustice issues as well. And so that's really where I began to, it extended from the highways. And that's when I began to see the stories about Shingle Mountain. I have a whole chapter on Shingle Mountain in the book. And that's when I got connected to Dallas Sierra Club. And you just start to get connected, and then everything starts to lay bare. And as you can see, right here on the screen, a lot of those sites in South and West Dallas that are redlined on this map from 1937 are the same places where all of these environmental justice sites have been documented over the past 100 years.
And so explain to the viewers, what are we looking at here with this graphic? And by the way, this is from Collin's environmental injustice archive that he is putting together with Paul Quinn College and also the Clinton Global Initiative. So tell everyone what you're looking at and what's significant about the different colors.
Yeah, so this is a map from the Homeowners Loan Corporation, which was set up by the federal government to rate neighborhoods based on their ability to pay back loans, their credit worthiness. And it was largely based on race. So the red and the yellow were the worst two classes. Those were places where you had Black, Mexican American, Latinx, or European descendants that were not considered white yet. You're Italian, those kinds of things. And then your blue and your green were your highest tier, and those were the places where the loans were being made. They were all white areas, and if you look at the demographic maps of Dallas, and if you look at the income maps of Dallas, they almost exactly mirror these same spatial characteristics. You have white and high income in these blue and green areas. Sorry, the motorcycle in the background. You've got lots of white and high income areas. You've got pockets of white and high income down in Oak Cliff. But the Black, Mexican American, and Latinx communities still fall in these same spatial geographies. So those patterns of injustice have been carried out and continue to carry out and shape Dallas. 1937 when these maps were made. But those legacies continue to carry on 80 to 100 years later.
And so and you'll have to bear with me because the map that I'm looking at, it's super tiny and I can't zoom in on it. But the red, sorry, so we'll explain a little bit to the viewers. The red parts that we're looking at predominantly, the one there surrounded by the yellow, this would be South Dallas near Lane Plating, which is 45 and Loop 12, right? We're getting down the I-45 corridor south of Dallas, is that correct?
Lane Plating is actually not on this map. It is so far south at this point, it's not included.
So we're looking at south of Lane Plating, so far South Dallas.
Lane Plating is, yes, very far south. These are, so the red on the west would be your traditional West Dallas, your La Bajadas, your cement cities. The red kind of right around downtown is Little Mexico, Freedman's Town, Deep Ellum.
Got it.
You can see Fair Park just off to the east there. And then, yeah, the red just below the Trinity River would be 10th Street.
Perfect, thank you. That's some good reference, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So this is 1937. Let's fast forward now to 2021. Tell us the correlation that you found between this, I guess, focusing of ethnicities and monetary abilities to now where the highest focuses we see in environmental pollutants, batch plants, Superfund sites. Tell us how that correlates.
It's a really high correlation. I don't know the exact, statistical correlation. I haven't done that myself, but the work of Downwinders, who is one of our other partners in this project, has done a lot of great work. And when we all team together, and when you go to the bottom of this environmental justice archive that we've created, you see all of the dots that we've collected over the past, that cover, from 1920 to today. They all follow this same geography. It's right along these same areas. And yeah, that's probably something we need to do, is to actually run the statistical analysis to find what the actual correlation is. But it will be very high. And then even today, the fights that you and I are working on with other community groups in Lane Plating and Globe Union and West Dallas 1, they're all in these same areas.
Yes.
So
Yeah, and that's the most frustrating thing, I think, is that literally all the calls that we get for help are in 3 parts of the Dallas Metroplex, right? West Dallas, we probably had 5 batch plants we've battled. Was that right, Collin, in the last 2 months? And then, of course,
Yeah,
South
I think
Dallas,
something like
yeah, Sand Branch, Lane Plating, and then in Garland with Globe Union. So it is not a coincidence.
no.
So tell us then on your book, which again, you phase out just a little bit when you were saying the title. It's called Paved Away. It's available on Amazon. It is a fabulous read. I highly recommend that everyone get it. Collin is also recording the audio to have it on like an audiobook. If you want to hear his dulcet tones reading you the book, that is an option as well in the near future. So Collin, tell us a little bit about your book. I diverted you from that. I apologize. Tell us about your book.
That's okay.
It's a lot to cover. It's a lot to cover in 15 minutes. Tell us about your book and specifically some of the highest racial zoning offenders that you came across. My top would be moving the traditionally African-American cemetery in order to make Central Expressway go where they wanted it to. That would be pretty high in my book, but I would love to hear what your top 10 worst.
Oh gosh. I don't know if I can think. Yeah, I can give you a couple for sure. I think the ones, because the Freedmen's Town gets a lot of coverage.
Yes.
It's close in, the neighborhood's almost gone. And also Fair Park. Fair Park gets a lot of coverage as well. And I think that one to me is especially egregious because not only did the city actively rezone, not allow permits to be made, actively deflated the home prices, and then took homes by eminent domain and tried to cheat Black homeowners out of fair market value. And we're giving higher prices to people who are city council members. I mean, it's just egregious. And I think, so Love Field, also a terrible zoning eminent domain travesty, because you had people who had nowhere to go get moved out by things like Central Expressway and other eminent domains. So then they went to Love Field, and then they expanded Love Field, and the Thicket neighborhood was zoned and taken away. And it's just, I mean, it's just mind-boggling. And Little Mexico as well, because Little Mexico, it was, which is now Uptown, the Harry Hines corridor, and they do what's called spot zoning. And so what happens is you have something that's all residentially zoned, and then piece by piece, when people buy property, they can have it rezoned. And that rezoning can be approved by the City Plan Commission, City Council. And what that does is it can be something that's commercial or something that's not necessarily in line with the neighborhood. And what that does is it starts to tear apart the fabric of the neighborhood. And when I was researching Little Mexico, you have these residents who are saying, we don't want to sell, but we will sell if you'll let us sell together. But no one would allow that to happen. And so they just squeezed people out one by one and destroyed the neighborhood of the fabric of the neighborhood. And I think they did the same thing in 10th Street. And it's just, I think that's the thing that's so disheartening to me, is the desire in Dallas to develop at all costs, and to not step back and think, is our neighborhood and our residents and our neighbors, we are talking about people who are our neighbors. They are still alive. They are still here. I talk with people who have lived through this, and it's like there's no humanity when it comes down to it. It's just a zoning change, and it's just the ability to build something else in the name of being for the greater good. And I think that's where we get things skewed a little bit.
And I think that's something that Ernest was saying, is that, you know, the first step in any type of activism is empathy. And until you can look at someone who is in a horrendous situation and not just, you know, have pity and like proverbially pat them on the head, but feel what it would be like to lose your home and have it snatched from you. That's not a happy place to go. But I think that's what it take for all of us to really change, is to start empathizing and really listening. And I think your book does that so brilliantly, and it puts it out there. I've lived here my whole life. I didn't know half of the stuff in your book. I didn't know like 3/4 of the stuff in your book. And that says something.
Neither did I.
Don't know this.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, you're exactly right. And I think that it's the privilege of being white and living in Dallas. I didn't have to know any of this. None of my existence in this city was bothered by any of this stuff if I didn't want it to. I had to actively seek all of this out. And I think that's a really critical distinction when we talk about this kind of work, especially as primarily white environmental groups are going into this kind of work. We have to understand what we bring with us and what that feels like. And to do that, you have to join in true, genuine relationship with the people you are working with. It cannot be arm's distance.
Yeah.
We don't, you know, North Dallas doesn't have shingle mountains, and that's by design. And so you have to work twice as hard to understand what that feels like. And that's privilege.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as we're coming to the end of our time, tell our viewers, if someone wants to help or get involved, what is the best thing that they could do in your opinion? Or do you have a website or a Facebook page that you could direct people to?
I would start with the Dallas Environmental Injustice Archive. It's the highlights of environmental injustice that we are working on and we're continuing to build on, because it gives you, we talk about a lot of these things as one-offs. And what our hope with the Environmental Injustice Archive is to tie those things together and to lay them all bare. And so I think starting there would be a great point, and then just continue to research on those things and other elements, and get involved with a group. You know, there are tons of, like, I love the history stuff. I think starting with the history is really important. Remembering Black Dallas, the Dallas Mexican American Historical League, and then West Dallas One. You know, there are tons of groups out there already doing this work in their neighborhoods. And so I just urge people to just follow their Facebook feeds, see what they're talking about. And if there's a place where you feel like you have the power or the privilege to assist in some way, shape, or form, then jump in and say, yeah, I can help with that. But it's a daily thing, like Ernest was talking about. This is a daily grind. It is everyday work. Dr. Hopes of Remembering Black Dallas said that in the Dallas a D Magazine interview. It's like, yes, we talk about Juneteenth, but it's every day. This is everyday work that we're doing.
Yeah, it is your awareness for the betterment of everyone is what it comes down to. Collin, thank you so much, friend. I am always happy to talk to you. Personally, thank you for your tireless work on Globe Union and lane plating, both for fun sites. I hope you have a wonderful vacation. And to remind everyone, Paved Away is Collin's book. It's out. Julia's put the Amazon link in the chat. Also, the Dallas archive that we were discussing, that is in the chat as well. Collin is on Facebook. And if you all, anyone out there in video TV land would like to help at the Dallas Sierra Club, at the Eco Action Committee, we always need help. And you and everyone would be welcome with open arms. So Collin, thank you, my friend. I will talk to you soon and have a wonderful time away.
Thank you, Collin,
Awesome. Thanks,
so
Victoria.
much.
Bye, y'all.
Thank you.
Thanks, Wendell.
All right, am I back on, Julie?
You're
Can you
on.
hear
I
me?
Yes,
All
we'll
right.
put you back on.
All right, thank you so much. I realize that muting me might be the best thing, but I don't want to miss our last guest. Our last guest today is Dawan Shockley. I will tell one quick story about Dawan so that you'll know the kind of person he is. Back during the Snowmageddon, ice storm, power outage, or whatever, I learned that Dawan and his family and other friends were literally feeding people out of their house, feeding neighbors, homeless people. They were on the front lines, and it is an honor and a privilege to have Dawan on with us tonight. And are you there, Dawan?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
I've got you.
Okay. Great.
Good. Well,
First-
a couple things. One is, tell us a little bit about your work with the community garden. I think certainly Dallas Sierra Club and Mendocine and Green Source and other groups, we're starting to see community gardens in a whole different way. I wonder if you'd tell our audience what's going on in the community garden world.
Okay. All right. Thank you, first of all, for having me on the show. Before I get started, I just wanted to acknowledge Ernest McMillan, because one of the major events that started the movement here was an incident that happened on Oakland, which is now Malcolm X, where they were, Mr. McMillan and also SNCC was protesting a grocery store. And I'm not sure what happened that day, but I think somebody dropped or broke something and it turned into a riot, and they were, put on trumped up charges, and he did actually, I believe, serve some time for that. So we appreciate your sacrifice. We honor Mother McMillan, Bill Stoner, J.B. Jackson, and all of the ancestors and the leaders from the past, and we're very happy to be here. Now, the Wyatt-Shockley Community Garden is, it was started at 3610 Dunbar by myself, Nasa Shockley, and Mother Myra Shockley, who is a widow of Skip Shockley. And 3610 Dunbar is where my Aunt B raised my two uncles, my mother, later myself, and then Nasa and her brother Jelani, used to come there. Aunt B and Mama Wyatt, they had an herb garden in the back. The whole community had gardens, and we would share food, and Aunt B would cook for the whole community. So when the house was burnt down in 2019, Skip talked to me, and we had talked about doing the garden. He talked to Nasa about doing the garden there, and it all went in line with the history of our family, with Skip doing the co-ops at the Black Panther Party, with the free lunch programs, with my mother and Diane Ragsdale doing the Black Women's Unified Front in the 70s to do the co-ops. So we just felt like this was a natural way to continue the legacy of our family, because one of Skip's favorite scriptures I had to do with feeding my sheep. And we feel that by doing God's work and feeding his people and building community in this garden, because we're not just growing food, we're growing people, we're growing relationships, we're growing community bonds. So that's what this is all about. It's about growth and development. We want to use the garden to teach people, to bring different people together, and just to build those relationships, and also to bring food to the community. And we plan to do co-ops as well to deal with the food apartheid in our areas, and just grow our community, revitalize community with community cleanups, and just do different things to help the environment. Well, we believe that it all starts with the garden, and it all starts with Mother Earth.
Wow, so I don't forget, and I want everyone to know that Dawan is going to be one of our new roving reporters for Green
Yes.
Source DFW, and he has already submitted his first masterpiece, and
Thank
we
you.
will. We're working on his piece, and I want to ask you about this, Dawan, again, to make sure I don't forget it, since I can't have notes, I go on memory. You mentioned some Native American connections and
Yes,
how that has influenced your view of Mother Earth. And I just wonder if you take a second and tell our listeners about that.
Okay. Well, my great grandmother Wyatt, Lucinda Wyatt, she was a Choctaw native. A genealogist that helps us out, Linda Bay, she did some research and found her name on the Dawes Rolls. We found out that one of our ancestors, Sufi, was married to Chief LaFleur, who led the Trail of Tears from Choctaw, Arkansas to Oklahoma. And also found out, because of the Pecos skulls that are under a pre-Columbian layer, that it shows that there's been Africans here since 70 BC. And it's very interesting that I just met with the Toltec chief last night, and he showed me the picture of the Olmec, and he says, we're brothers. He said, we've lived here for centuries, and it's time for that story to be told. So what we do at the Wyatt-Shockley Garden is we want to continue some of the legacy. Like with Mother Wyatt, she knew how to use different herbs, so we didn't, so my uncle who had sickle cell anemia, he didn't have to go to the hospital so much. They believed in keeping the mucus down, because without the mucus, there could be no disease. A lot of people know that Dr. Sebi does teach that now. That's actually something that the indigenous people and also the African people have been doing for a while, because, as we know, we have African and indigenous ancestry. We're not just one or the other, because there was a slave trade and there are also people who were enslaved here. So, with the story that I wrote, it talks about how the Bantu women in Africa and the indigenous women here started agriculture at the same time, and they had growing techniques like the Three Sisters. I also found out that the herb produces phytoestrogen and also phytomelanin. The earth is actually a living organism, like a cell in a body, and we're like the organelles that deal with the organ to keep it healthy. But what is happening right now is that some of the cells, because of our thinking, have become much like a cancer to that cell. So we're sucking the life out of our earth, out of Mother Earth, which is the oil is the blood of the earth. So we're sucking her blood out to use it for the cars and different things like that. That's why it's important for us to deal with solar energy, for us to get back to honoring the earth and bringing balance to the earth, because there was a study that was done that by 2050, if we don't change the way that we view agriculture, that there will be more 100-degree days, there will be more droughts and more flooding, the air quality will be terrible, and we won't be able to grow food. So when we talk about building legacy, we're talking about building a legacy for tomorrow. I'm a father, I have 3 children, they'll have children. There were people, our ancestors understood centuries and centuries ago that if we don't take care of the earth, then it will affect future generations. So it is important for us to do the things that we need to do now so that we can create the proper legacy for our children so that they can live on, because there's a lot of damage that was done by generations before us that we have to work to fix so we can move confidently into the future.
Yeah, Dawan, that brings up a question. I think especially some of the more senior members of the environmental movement, I think we'd all be interested in hear how is the whole idea of protecting Mother Earth and clean air and clean water, how is that being received? How, like in the community gardens and, trying to be organic and just, making this a better world. How's that being received in your community?
It's really being received. Like I have a friend, his name is Devontae Peters. He does the alkaline arrow, and he sells herbs and sea moss, and he does very well because there's really a push to getting back to the earth. Dr. Sebi really revolutionized, and also Dr. Layla Africa, a way that a lot of our people view food. So there's really a movement towards health. When we talk about the community gardens, there's a lot of support for it in the community. I mean, people are really making a turnaround right now, I feel. And I think it's being well received in the community, not just in our community, but across the world, because I think people are starting to realize that things like fast food and different things like that is what's really cutting our lives short. I often make a joke that when you deal with the Food and Drug Administration, it's the food that makes you sick, so you'll need the drugs, so the drugs can be administered. So
that's good.
Yeah,
hey, Dawan, Dawan, put that in your next article for Green Source. I think you're on to something there.
I think I'll work that out for you. Okay.
All right, Victoria, I'll let you ask a question in here.
Dawan, first of all, it's lovely to meet you, sir, virtually online. Thank you so much for being here. I wanted to echo something that you said. I actually was raised on all alternative medicine, and I still grow herbs for medicine in my garden. And what I find so fascinating about what you're saying is that science is now slowly but surely backing up what your family has known for centuries, coming from your Native American roots and your African roots, that many of the plants that we grow do have wonderful, now tangible, right, via science, benefits to us all. So I applaud you for following your truth and utilizing that, and now also that society is backing it up.
Right.
Can you tell our listeners specifically where your garden is, and if they wanted to come and participate and help you, is that something that's allowable? Do you want volunteers? Do you welcome help?
Yes, actually, we have a event this Sunday for Father's Day. It's a Father's Appreciation Day. It's going to be on June the 20th from 10 to 1. We invite everybody out to come. We actually, we definitely deal with volunteers. We actually have an agreement with a group called Socialwise, which is powered by Mark Cuban, which was actually the opportunity was placed there by a organization our co-founder was former vice president of CIBN, along with Marcus Russell.
Yep.
Did a great job in getting with Socialwise and to get them, they're connected and give opportunities to other organizations. But through them, we're able to pay people to actually come out and work. It's amazing because in South Dallas, 82% African American. That the unemployment rate is 7.6% in South Dallas. And like in the county, it's only 4.2%, and the entire state is 7.5%. So and I'm not talking to, see, a lot of people don't know the difference between South Dallas and Oak Cliff. On the other side of the Trinity is Oak Cliff. South Dallas is what we like to call an island. It's basically like a forgotten place. There's a lot of food apartment. And of course, South Dallas and Oak Cliff, we definitely have a relationship, but we have very unique issues over there. So when I talk about South Dallas, it's a very small area that has, most of the people are unemployed. So through this program, we're able to pay people who may have been unemployable because they may have gotten in trouble, they may be homeless, they may have, be in a drug treatment center, whatever the case, these people can get paid to actually serve the community and to improve the environment. So I think that's a really big push. But before that, we have volunteers that just came to work, and that's great too. And we definitely appreciate it. So I think the need is definitely being seen by the community, and people are responding appropriately.
That is wonderful. And as you were talking, Julie just put your website nonprofit link up in the chat. I encourage everyone to go check that out. And what you're saying is music to my ears. Al Smith is a friend of ours. He just came and spoke for us at our general meeting 2 weeks ago. He is lovely. And Marcus, there's no words for how much we adore Marcus. He is just rock star and a half. So I advise looking up both of those groups, Socialwise, which is what Dawan mentioned for Mark Cuban, and EarthX. It's one of their ventures. And also Marcus' group is Commissary is Very Necessary, CIVIN. Yes. Wonderful organizations. Wonderful.
Right. Great organizations. And they were asking about Juneteenth earlier and what it means. Myself, Olinka Green, Marcus Russell, D. Ashley, Brooks, and Mariah McDonald, along with Dion Primo and a couple of other people. We had an event last year in Waxahachie during the Juneteenth weekend for the Texas Poor People's Campaign. And when we did the research, we found out that Martin Luther King, he called Bobby Seale and asked him to help him with the Texas Poor People's Campaign. And 4 weeks later, he was killed at the Lorraine Hotel because Martin Luther King said, "This time we're coming back to get our check." So we decided that when we talk about Juneteenth, the thing that we take from it is self-determination. Because the Juneteenth, after our people were free, because I don't like to use the word slave, after our people were free from that bondage, they went and they started building towns. They started doing gardens. They had farmers coalitions between 1910 and 1920. You saw a raise in land ownership by Black people. We had our own banks, of course, Black Wall Street and different things like that. So for me, June deals with self-determination. One thing that we do with groups that I deal with, like GMF and different organizations, is that we are self-determined. We did when Guerrilla Mainframe decided to do the Community Unification Days in Highland Hills. We didn't ask for anything. We went out and we did it. When we did the health fairs, we went out and did it. And I think that's something that Skip Shockley taught us, is you don't wait on nobody.
That's right.
And you can protest all you want, but the fact of the matter is the way that we got results, so we went out and did it. It's like with the Texas Freeze, organizations like Not My Son, CIVN, and organizations that deal with Camp Rhonda. Shout out to Inspired Visions and the Mimi Design Institute. We're very proactive. Me and Linda Bay, we were out cutting wood. I went and bought an axe, and if we wouldn't have took the measures, more people that died. I remember one night when we weren't able to go out, 2 people died, from the freeze. And I was just, I was kind of incapacitated at the time. But if we hadn't did anything at all, more people would have died. And that was a people's effort. That wasn't, the city didn't get involved, the state didn't get involved, FEMA wasn't there, the people were there. And we set a precedent. So, and it's not about me, it's about the people that are around me. So I wanted to mention all those people because they are very important. And I think that's what Juneteenth is all about for us and the people that we deal with in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, out in Baltimore and all over the country, is that we are determined to do it for ourselves, because that's what we learned from the 10-point program, the Black Panther Party, is self-determination.
Amen. Amen. Wendell, do you have another question? Are you at a point in the road where you can respond? Maybe not. Wendell is traipsing through the hill country. He may be out of pocket. Well, Dawan, as we are coming to the end of our time here, I wanted to ask you a question. I'm looking at your website, and the last thing on your website is a quote that you have that says, "A laugh to be joyous must flow from a joyous heart, for without kindness, there can be no true joy." And so I think everything that you have told us today, I think that is your mission statement. That is you, that embodies your group, that embodies everything that you are. And I think when you come from a place of love, nothing bad can touch you.
Thank you. I believe that love is the most powerful energy in the universe, and that evil and the devil can only operate with you if you're able to freeze your love and bring you into a situation of hate. Love for self and love for humanity is what it's all about. And, that's what we're really all about. It's a family thing. Like, we love each other, and we keep the spirit of our ancestors alive by showing our love and paying for what they did for us. So I definitely appreciate that. And as the Skip Shockley Foundation and my family appreciates that as well.
Well, thank you, sir. And I'll tell you what, if you ever need any help from conservation or eco action, or you just want to call and chew the fat, you give me a call. I would love to talk to you anytime for any reason. You have extended family here whenever you need it. So, my friend, Wendell, do you have anything? Are you back amongst the connected cellular?
Can you hear me? I may be back.
You're back.
All right, Dawan, this and Ernest, if you're still on, and all of our listeners tonight, I think hopefully LeBeau is going to be with us, our Oak Cliff Earth Day coordinator. This is just the beginning. This teamwork, this collaboration is only going to get stronger. And thank you to our sponsors. Thank you to Julie and Carl and Victoria. And thank you all to our guests. And we will not talk to you in July, but we will see everybody in August.
Thank you,
That's it.
everyone.
Have a great evening.
You too. Thank you all. Thank you, Julie and Carl.
Thank you, guys.